Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. Doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Sean Greenspan. Let's get to it.
Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for hopping on. You just came back from a trip, right?
Yeah, 15 states in the Northeast with my wife and two kids, two boys. There's a lot of history in the Northeast. You know, we went through DC and Boston and New York and all the way over to Niagara Falls. You know, just really great experience. Bit of a whirlwind, but it feels good to be home.
Good for you. How long were you on that trip?
About 2.5 weeks.
Outstanding. Working, or was it almost all vacation?
Well, one of the things I do, I have a community of digital business owners called Rhodium. And so I have people all over the country who are part of that. So I reached out to the community and said, hey, if you're in these cities on these dates, let's get together for dinner. So I probably did about, 10, 15 meetups along the way, 10, probably closer to 10.
That's so exciting. You hear a lot of people talk about work-life balance. And then maybe a few years ago, maybe with COVID, you started hearing work-life integration, right? And I know I'm not a person for semantics, but to me, that really is what it's all about, right? You have this group that you have cultivated, and I know a little bit about it. I'd love for you to share more about it. And having dinner with them, getting to see them in person, probably for the first time ever, or at least in a while, it's got to be exciting. And the fact that that's your work. You're a networker, so that's really cool.
Yeah. It's funny though, like I was not, if you would have told me, 10 years ago before I started doing all this, that I'd be kind of curating a community of people and running events and stuff, I would have said you were crazy, because just not my, I in the past really preferred to be the guy behind the scenes, very much an introvert, in terms of group settings and things like that. So, but after getting out of my comfort zone and doing this for a little while, I found a love for it. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do the work that I do and be able to help these people. And, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, tell me what got you going? What made you want to start your group?
Well, I was buying online businesses back early days, like 2009, 2010, and did that for a few years. I live in Montana and realized, man, it's kind of isolating being an entrepreneur, especially an online one. I want to connect with other people who are doing this to kind of share experiences, best practices, stuff like that. So I started an in-person event in 2012, and that was really the spark. It had a business partner at the time who had experience in that. And so I was not the one who, was like super positive, like, hey, let's go do live events, conferences, stuff like that. But I'm like, yeah, let's give it a shot, And so that's kind of how I originally got into it, was let's connect with some other people in person and see who else is out there doing the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah. And what was the point of that event? Just to not feel, I feel the isolation for sure. There's times where, like yesterday, I went to a coffee shop. I'm like, I need some human interaction. And even if I wasn't working with anyone there, and when I'm in towns where I have clients or people that work for me, of course, I'm trying to connect them.
Yeah.
I got even just like I have a little lunch tomorrow that I'm stoked about. Me and another one of my team members are taking a client out to lunch, and it's great to see people. So what the inspiration behind that event was, just connect others, or that you were already working with, or just connect to.
Yeah, there's a few layers to it on the original intention. So originally, the idea was I would talk to people in, like, I live in Montana, so I talk to people locally. Most of them had like brick and mortar traditional businesses, and I was talking about this digital marketing stuff, and just like I wasn't finding, like, we weren't speaking the same language is what it felt like, right? So I wanted to find other people who are speaking the same language, who I could learn from. And also, like, we had some successes with the acquisitions we'd done, and had some knowledge to share. So we wanted to share, kind of what we were doing as well. And I think good things come from surrounding yourself with good people. So that was all part of it. And then if there was a side benefit, it would have been, hey, maybe we'll see some deals that we wouldn't have otherwise seen if we're kind of known as a connector within this industry.
Yeah. And, I think that's awesome, right? So you started this group because you wanted to like be around people. You wanted to, learn. I couldn't agree more, right? How important it is to network. And I don't think there's anything wrong I actually think there's something awesome that, like, of course you're trying to get, business out of it too, right? I believe that like you weren't doing it to get business, but you don't want to act naive, like, hey, meeting new people and being the connector here, that's obviously not going to be bad for your business, right? And it's something that I've tried to do as well. I reached out to people that have networking groups, and that's how we got connected. And I all the time, like right now, I'm looking for a new lawyer, actually, right? And like it's awesome. Like when you send that out, if someone sends you a text or an email and says, "Hey, do you know this person?" You're able to connect someone. Like that's great. I mean, you're making the world smaller, and that's definitely something we need in this digital age. So I mean, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Um, how'd you navigate through COVID? Everything was remote, and I know you guys, you're well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your center event is in person, and you have
Mhm.
some in-person events, and then you have other digital ways to connect, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
a couple things on the COVID front. Yeah, it sucked. And uh, for a lot of reasons. Typically, you're contracted with a venue, so you were a little bit at the mercy of the venues being understanding and willing to adjust your contract and all that kind of stuff. So there's like this fear of, hey, what happens if, like, the venue still keeps me to the same minimum revenue guarantee and I can't actually throw an event because of COVID. So that was like the initial, scary part of it, which is not a small amount because we contract like rooms and food and beverage and all that kind of stuff. So that was definitely, nervous, but I was able to navigate that by working with the venue and just basically saying, hey, let's push it out a year. Um, in terms of what I would do to keep the community engaged and generate some revenue, I went to first principles. So I asked myself, okay, so what actually happens at an in-person event? What are the first principles of interaction that happens there? Well, we use our eyes to see other people. We use our voices to communicate with one another. We shake hands and that kind of thing, but like, does everybody actually do that? Well, maybe not. So then it was like, okay, well, how can we kind of translate what we do offline at these events into some kind of a digital experience like Zoom or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first approach I took. And then what you need to do in that scenario is then, once you've kind of figured out your first principles of how this could translate and you can accomplish the same outcome that happens in person, then it's like, okay, well, what can I do online that actually can't really do digitally? Or I'm sorry, in person, right? So
So
how do we
how do you look at this
leverage
as
the
an
medium?
opportunity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we look at this as an opportunity? Exactly. How can we leverage the medium? So a quick example of that would be, um, have you ever been to a conference and they've done a screen share of like somebody's screen and they're trying to do a walkthrough and it's way up in front of the room on a projector and you can barely see what they're doing? Now you take that to a
Yeah.
digital experience and somebody's sharing their screen and it's actually as if you're staring over their shoulder at their computer monitor, right? So that was like, hey, let's leverage this medium for what it's best used for. So, like basically trying to make the best out of it. And ultimately it became a whole nother revenue stream for the business, like the digital component to it. We have Rhodium Remote, and then we have the in-person event as well. So good things came from it, but yeah, it's been a rough stressful couple of years.
Yeah, good challenge though. And way to look at and it's funny. I before the call, when we were getting ready, and I was like, "Hey, we don't have to just be yes men to each other. We could challenge each other's ideas and stuff." But I'll tell you, I just love that, man, because like you didn't like it's just a great perspective. Okay, how do we replicate what we've done? But then this is new. What can we use to grow? I mean, and deliver a different and better service. Like, I think a lot of people didn't look at it as an opportunity to grow. So,
Mhm.
I love that. Um, let's go back to the isolating feeling of entrepreneurship. That's something that's been swirling in the back of my head since you mentioned it. I don't think a lot of people consider that, right? When you start something, it's just you until you're willing to forego X amount of your own paycheck or savings uh, to others. That's what, it's just you. Or
Right.
you convince people to work for a percentage of equity and you have partners or whatever. Why was there such a strong need to, like reach out and build a community? Obviously, relating to like your overall happiness, right? It's kind of the angle that I'm looking at, and I'm thinking right now about blue zone. Are you familiar with blue zones?
In terms of life extent, or not life extension, but yeah,
Expectancy, yeah.
life expectancy. Yeah.
The 7 areas in the world that have the longest life expectancy. One of the biggest things that they have is a strong community.
Hmm.
So it's no wonder that your innate feeling was, how do I build a community, right? Like we know this inside. It's good. It's just good for us. I think we're still trying to figure out why, from like a scientific and biology standpoint, but we have that feeling. I don't. It's not something a lot of people would argue, right? That like having a good community is good. Um, and yeah, I kind of want to just unpack that with you, right? You had that feeling. What was it like having that feeling? Like, it sounds like your businesses were successful, but you were still looking for something, right?
Yeah, to some degree. So maybe a framework to put this around would be Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
So we all have um, basic needs of food, water, shelter, etc. Right? But what happens is when you achieve a certain level of success, those are not really something that you put a lot of time in. It's not like I wasn't worrying about paying my rent or being able to, put food on the table for my family or anything like that. So the next level up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs would be like safety. So personal security, employment safety, all that kind of stuff, so that you can continue to do those types of things, right? So again, financially, like I was able to handle that. I was in good health, etc. The next one up is love and belonging, right? And so it's like right up there after the very base level needs that we have is love and belonging and friendship, intimacy, etc. So I had like, if you think about what a solo digital entrepreneur does, they're literally sitting at their computer for 8 hours a day or more, tapping away and maybe messaging with people a little bit online if they have customers or something like that, unless they have a large team. But even if you have employees and you give up some of your, your profits in the business to hire people, you can't speak to them in the same way that you might speak to a peer about the challenges that you're having, because maybe it demotivates them or whatever. There needs to be proper boundaries with that, right? So I think it's, for me, it's like having somebody who can understand the challenges that you're facing, who has experience solving problems that you either are about to solve or try to solve, or you didn't even know you're going to have, but they're coming up on you. Being able to learn from other people's experiences is like one of the best leverages that you can have. And it's just like, emotionally, having the uncommon commonality that you're both digital entrepreneurs, it's like, like it's an instant connection. And I think there's value in, the emotional side of somebody understanding you and like, kind of ability for you to be seen, if you will.
Yeah. You had me drawing, I should say, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, because I love visual representations, and um,
And
that's
in fact, if just as a preview, if we get into it, I've actually designed Rhodium to meet every level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs for me. And I can talk about that if we have time in a
for
minute. But sorry, I didn't
for
want to interrupt you. That's more of a preview.
no, for you,
Yep.
like personally.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly the direction I was going to go, because I was gonna put you on the spot, Chris, and I was going to say, um, like, I can tell you with my company, right? So Green Spring Consulting, we're a marketing agency. Our mission is to expand the impact of mission-driven companies. The story behind that is I was working for a powerful company, an awesome company. I love what they stand for, but it just wasn't the reason I was put on this earth. But I did feel I had a good way to. I did feel I have a strength in communication, and I had a strength in being able to kind of like express that. And that's kind of marketing, like express that on the mass level. So I started working with other organizations that I loved, right? Fitness companies, wellness companies, and expand their impact through marketing, because I didn't have a great idea for a new company. And I really like what the mission of the company does, but
So
sometimes, yeah.
real quick, can I ask you, in that previous role that you had, what level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs did you feel was missing? If you kind of, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but above love and belonging, you have esteem. So that's respect, self-esteem, status. I'm guessing you had that because it sounds like you were successful in that career. And then, but the top one is self-actualization. So that's like the desire to be the most that you can be and to make an impact and things like that. So was it
Yeah.
really that top piece for you, or was it other
Um,
things?
it was that top piece. Really good job. So that kind of takes the bottom two out, health insurance cover and safety, and, food, water, shelter, that stuff. The culture was outstanding. Some of my best friends are still there, traveled all the time. And then esteem, they really made you feel important, which I think is lost in a lot of big companies. I definitely am the type of person, I was like, I don't care if I'm 22, I should be the president. That was definitely my mindset, but that's probably why I wanted to go start my own company. Self-actualization, right, is where I would say I was lost. But here's the reason that I made a dramatic shift, to just quit. I didn't see a path to self-actualization. That's the thing. It's not like I didn't see how I could ever get there in that role, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Spending 40 hours a week doing that, commuting there, thinking about that, maybe the occasional weekend travel and weekend work. Um, to me, I just felt like was too much, and just not on that path. Um, and it's interesting, because what I was going to add, I want to let's unpack how Rhodium is helping you get there, because it's something that I'm struggling with, right? What's the best way to design the company? I want my company designed so me, my employees, my clients, everyone's reaching it. And am I 100% responsible for that? In no way. But I can definitely do things that change the way I interact with clients, so that they have more time to do things they care about, or they're expanding their impact. Somehow we're helping them on there. But yeah, that's exactly where I was going to dive. I was going to actually ask you if Rhodium's doing that for you. So
Yeah, man. So not like I didn't realize this would be what it would become. But after doing the events for a couple of years, and in parallel running and operating these businesses, I realized that I had this lens of like, I'm a great creator starter. But once I got to just operating the portfolio, when I wasn't doing a bunch of acquisitions and it was really just about kind of turning the wheel, like I was not happy. Like I was not enjoying the work, but I was doing these events, and events by the nature of them, they're very much like a blank slate every year. You may have different people, you may have different speakers, you may be in a different venue. So it's like you get to create a new business every year. And as a starter creator type, I was loving that. Like this was really cool. And I was starting to hear stories of people having really good results. Like they bought another person's business and that person sold their business for a lot of money. And it's because I connected them, right? And so like I was getting a lot of feeling like self-actualization in that like I was making an impact on people. It was outside my comfort zone. It was really well wired to my talents of kind of being that starter creator type. So started over time just realizing, man, this is really cool. And um, what I decided was like, I'm going to run this business as if I'm going to own it forever. And when you shift from, I need to make the next dollar to, hey, I want to run this thing forever. And it's like a forever business for me. You totally change the strategy of how you do things. I started doing things like that are just like crazy to any other event person. Like I talk to every person before inviting them into the community, right? Things that just aren't scalable in any way. But knowing that that investment up front will pay dividends over the long run, over forever, by not getting the wrong people into the community, if you will. So and then I started thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, okay, well, if I could get Rhodium to the point where, it kicks off a couple $100,000 a year in profit for me, that takes care of those base level needs, et cetera. I get my, kind of connection aspect of Maslow's hierarchy of needs because I'm around a bunch of people having really interesting conversations. Like these are people who give me energy when I leave those dinners for my road trip. Like you just feel like energized, and I was getting esteem. I'm a leader of a community. People respected me. I was getting recognition. I had a lot of freedom because you work really hard for a period of time, and then and then it gets to slow down throughout the rest of the year. And so it was like, and then I was making an impact on people, and like I was learning and growing as an individual. Somebody who's not naturally wanting to be a leader and up front was able to self-actualize and grow in that regard. And so it's like I started realizing, man, this hits every level of need. So then, over the last 7 or so years, I've been working towards all the other businesses that I do, potentially exiting all of them so that I can just focus on Rhodium, because it in theory could actually check off all those boxes. And so just a couple of months ago, I exited the last company that I was operational in. So now I'm just like freshly able to really focus on just kind of optimizing what I've been working on for the last 10 years or whatever.
Congrats, man. That's
Thanks.
awesome. That
Yeah.
is a huge accomplishment. And you're kind of just probably feeling like you're at the start of it, but don't be scared to go back and be grateful for all you've accomplished.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I should add is like we all started where we're worried like we're going to make the entrepreneurial leap. Man, what happens to my health insurance? Like, how do I get that? And like, or what if this doesn't work? What if people don't want what I have? Like, if I don't find product market fit, like I'm very fortunate in that, I've pushed this flywheel for 10 years consistently, starting from where many other people have. And I'm lucky enough to be able to focus on some of these higher level needs. But, there are many people who, whether it's inflation or COVID or whatever, like they've had to focus their time, attention, emotional energy on lower areas of Maslow because of the nature that they're in. So, I definitely want to recognize that I'm very fortunate and grateful to be in the place where I can do that.
The fact that you're bringing gratefulness to the front is just beautiful. And it's funny, Chris, I did not know this at all about you. That there was this like, I guess we just never dove into like the spiritual side behind like the business. And that's really what I've noticed a theme of the people I've brought on. A lot have been entrepreneurs or um, have an entrepreneurial spirit. Now, what I mean by that is maybe like I've had people on here that have a corporate job, they love it and they plan to do it for the rest of their lives. But outside of that, they're artists or they're athletes and they take that so seriously like a business, right? And that's kind of what I mean by entrepreneurial spirit. Like they're living completely with intention, trying to focus on, designing the life that they're like actually living in, really finding a combination between their discipline and their their ultimate happiness. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to, I know I reached out about Rhodium a good bit ago, and I definitely want to circle back with that. I mean, everything it sounds like you're doing is really cool. So I took that as a little note over here. Um, Let me ask you a completely random question. Are you from Montana?
Um, Technically was born in Missouri, but my family moved us here when I was 9 years old. So
Nice.
I lived here until I graduated with my bachelor's, and then
Nice.
lived in Vegas for a few years, Seattle for a few years. And then after we had our first child, moved back to Montana to raise the family. So we've been back since 2009.
What part of Montana?
Missoula, Western Montana.
Oh, beautiful. Back half of September, I'm gonna come see you in person. I'm gonna live in Missoula for 2 weeks.
You may be catching me at a very stressful time, just to warn you, because my event's October 13th. So, but if you come to me, like, I will definitely have lunch or whatever. So I'm excited to hear that, though. That's awesome.
Yeah. Where's the event this year?
At in Las Vegas.
Nice. How did you choose Vegas?
It's been there for 10 years.
Yeah, great. It's great event space there.
Well, it actually, yeah, it's set up like there's a lot of flights to get there, so it's very accessible travel wise for many people, and there's just a lot of infrastructure in place for different venues. This will be the first year this will be my 11th year of doing it in the same venue that I've done it in the past. So I've always been at different spots along the way. So there's a lot
nice.
of infrastructure.
Nice. Going back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we have a lot of things that we hear growing up, that we learn about while we read self-help books, that we hear, in this entrepreneurial space. Every entrepreneur has the book and the podcast to listen to. That's going to be your next, your gateway to success. What made the Maslow hierarchy of needs stand out to you? Because I could tell the conviction that you talk about it around. Like you talk about it with such conviction that it's like you really feel like this is correct, right? Like you definitely take it as this is right. Don't know if that many people would argue it, but what do you think drew you to it?
I feel like I've had many times in my life where I've not completely understood myself. So why I do what I do, why I don't do certain things that I want to do, etc. And so I've always seeked out frameworks to help clarify my thinking and to kind of explain things. And the reason I chose to speak about things in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just actually, I went to a workshop with a friend of mine who's a professional speaker coach, and she put up this slide about business and how it relates to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you have to take into account who your customer is and where they're at on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it was like this aha moment for me, like, oh, that's why I've been doing some of the things I've been doing with Rhodium. And so it was just like this weird aha moment. And since then, I've just kind of leaned into it.
It's so funny that you say that, because what I was just jotting down was that so we all think we know what we do and how we spend time and the decisions we make. This podcast is not when I started this podcast, which was in February, I was not at a point where I necessarily felt like I had a tremendous abundance amount of time and energy and effort I want to spend behind the screen. With that, I also was looking to scale my business. So I was made a mental commitment to myself. I'm going to do what I'm doing now plus other things, right? Because I'm going to try to grow. And I said, I'm going to start a podcast. And it was incongruent, right? It was truly incongruent. And I noticed that I have people, maybe clients, saying, hey, do you have time for a meeting? I'm like, I really don't. Let's put it into our weekly meeting or whatever. And that same day, I'm, looking to say oh, I should actually have them on a podcast episode. Or, I enter a podcast, like this with absolutely no thought. One thing, I don't know if if you, would you consider yourself that you try to be really like efficient and productive? And I don't mean that as like a trick question. You know, some people like I focus on efficiencies all the time. I don't know. Do you find yourself doing that?
Um, I think I am most motivated in situations where I have a strong understanding of the vision and the reason why I'm doing it. And I like to track results over time. But I wouldn't say I'm overly concerned about productivity necessarily, but more concerned about like good decision making.
Mm. But I respect that. Um, I definitely, for better or for worse, I would say some a lot of times for worse, driven by productivity efficiency, right? Like
Yeah,
sit
because
in
you can be really
meetings.
productive at doing the wrong thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, and it can also deteriorate the quality of life or the quality of what you're doing, which then makes you not as productive, right? You know, sitting in meetings where in the back of your head you're thinking you're like, like let's speed this up, let's just get this over with. Which we all know if we actually spent that time thinking, like giving all of your energy towards what's in front of you, it's probably going to be the most efficient and effective anyway. Long way of saying, I don't ever feel that with podcasts like this in the middle of a work day where, my phone that I have recording me, I see email, Slack, text, email pop up. Doesn't bother me, but like sometimes, in meetings where I don't have that clear vision, I've noticed that I do feel that, right? Like I'm kind of just like, all right, like, let's keep the ball rolling. So, uh, it's just interesting that you say that you are talking about like you were realizing how you make decisions, because I'm realizing that I crave this. This is a way of building community for me, right? Like I crave these conversations, where like I can dive in with people, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us here. It means a
Yeah,
lot.
my pleasure.
Yeah. Let me let me ask a few closing questions here, if you don't mind. Um, First would be, what is the most exciting thing going on with Rhodium right now? Maybe not around the event, because that's probably the go-to.
Right. Um, I would say the most exciting thing going on is the fact that for the first time we have over $1 billion in like asset value. Like the people's businesses are all worth collectively $1 billion in one subset of Rhodium, which is the Rhodium remote community. And so like to me, that's like, man, I'm surrounding myself with like money is kind of a scorecard, right? And but people have been able to take something, probably from many of them from nothing. Some of them acquired their businesses, but and build such an asset value. They had to have like let me put it this way: is there's this guy named Buckminster Fuller who talks about the idea, and he's the guy who created the geodesic dome. We probably all played with them when we were kids. They were out in the playground, and they're like little half domes that you climb on and stuff. That's one of his many patents that he created. But anyway, he talks about the idea of procession, which is um, he gave the metaphor of a honey. So, or I'm sorry, a bee. So, Sean, if I were to ask you, like, what is the purpose of a bee? What would you say?
To pollinate flowers.
Okay. Most people would say to seek honey, but at a 90-degree angle to that seeking, they're pollinating flowers around the world, right? So,
Oh, yeah, I see
so
what you're saying.
and he does the same thing. He did the same thing for himself, which is like, I am no longer going to seek honey, in his world, money. I'm just going to do what's best for humanity. And then, through luck and serendipity and other things, like the money will take care of itself, right? So that's the idea of procession, is that like if we're out there seeking money, there's this like 90-degree angle ripple effect that's happening of impact around you, that's pollinating or what, whatever it is for you. And so like, I think, some people get too obsessed with money, but like the seeking of it, actually, as long as you're in motion and active, like you're actually making an impact, even though you may not see it. So what I'm saying in that regard is that the fact that these people have been able to create these kind of the scale of businesses and I don't even know what the impact is around the world, but the ripple effect must be pretty massive from such a small group of really talented people. So I'm very proud of that, and I think it's kind of a cool, exciting thing to see that Rhodium's grown to the point where we've been able to collect this unique group of humans.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that's totally awesome. And that's a testament to you because they all trust you. And I'll say you said something really interesting. Money's a scorecard. I remember being a little kid and trying to figure out how I can live without money because I'm talking a little kid, like weird intuition age, right? Where it's like you have no idea, like reflecting back, you have no idea why you would think something like this. But I remember trying to figure out how to live without money, writing down, I could live in the woods, I can make a tent, I can fish for food. Like, because I just didn't really believe in it. And as I grew up, I realized it's probably going to be easier to make enough money to not need to worry about money than to try to escape it altogether. Almost like, kind of like the monk side versus like, you know, the financial side, right? Like trying to solve money problems that way.
Right.
And I so I have this like inner feeling that like I don't love money, and then I have this like more surface level feeling where it's like my goal is to my goal absolutely is to reach financial freedom, and I hope to inspire and help people along the way. But that's certainly my goal, so I can 100% reprioritize everything in life towards service and learning and stuff like that. And we get into the separate discussion, kind of like that what you were talking about like you can actually put that first and not seek money. But that's kind of like a separate topic. But I just love the way that you brought up money as a scorecard, because I do think money is a great scorecard to the level of service that you provide. You can measure it down to the penny. You can't measure somebody's health or happiness like that. You think you can, people think they can, but they definitely can't. And money is certainly a scorecard. And I'm going through an internal battle, I guess, of trying to have both of those feelings be fully embodied, right? That
Right.
money.
What's the second feeling?
The first one is right, like money will solve money problems and allow me to live financially free and in priorities. And the second one is that like, I don't really believe in like I in my dream world would be like, if everyone was hardworking and honest and chasing their passion, and I don't know, maybe some sort of bartering system or not like I don't know, like
Automation.
what? Yeah,
Like
commodities,
robots
like
do everything for us, right?
or even just I don't know, some way like on a psychological level to like cohesively exist as one. It's definitely a dream, I'll tell you that. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that like money's totally a scorecard, and I want people to build a good relationship with it and not say like it's not all about the money, and not feel like proud about that, because like money's extremely important and it's a great tool to measure things.
Yeah.
Of course,
One
it's
exercise you could do. I learned this from a coach, person, like more of a like not life coach, but more like a business coach. Um, have a conversation with money. So like you personify money, right? And so for you, if you're if you're like you have this like negative view, like deep down you have these scripts, the story that you tell yourself that like we don't really need money, or like money's not actually good for the world, etc. Like, do you think that's actually going to increase the likelihood that you avoid actually getting money? Right. So it starts to become this like hidden subconscious script where you make decisions that you don't even maybe realize you're doing. But you can have like a conversation with money, and you have to like you personify the money. So you have like a first person conversation, and then you have like a second person and a third person conversation, and you give voice to it. And you might say like, money, I hate you, you always come and go. And then what would in your mind, what do you think money would say to that?
oh boy, money I hate you always come and go. Yeah, I don't want to stick around you. You hate me.
Right? Or like, what are you talking about? I'm just a tool. Like
Yeah,
there's no meaning behind my action of coming and going. Like, why are you putting this on me? Like that kind of
yeah.
thing. So it's just kind of an interesting exercise to go through if you're ever interested.
Oh, I absolutely will. Have you ever read a book called Secrets of a Millionaire Mindset?
That's Harvecker, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've actually read that book, no, but I'm familiar with T. Harvecker.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth reading. Quick read, like 180 pages. Definite page turner where every page there's like a tip or like an action item. So it's one of those you could just fly through. And then I do think the exercises are beautiful. But yeah, it's almost like do you know the book The Secret by Rhonda?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's almost like if The Secret met Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's like the mindset of money and how to self actualize it. So yeah, I resonate with what you're saying quite a bit. Um, Chris, the last thing that I just wanted to ask was, what's the best way to learn about Rhodium? And if you were just gonna say, maybe something that if you were gonna try to personify like who Rhodium's for, how would you share that in case anyone's interested in meeting some cool people?
Yeah. Well, before we do that, there was one thing I did want to ask you, and how's your time?
I'm good, man.
Okay. So I put out, I was going through a struggle in the past, and I put on
Oh,
out
cool.
on Facebook, like, um, what am I optimizing for? Basically, like, what are you optimizing for? Is happiness the right thing to optimize around? And I got some really interesting answers from that. But like, do you feel like happiness is what we should all be optimizing for?
Wow, that's an outstanding question. Happiness is the first word in the title of the podcast,
Mhm.
and no, I don't think it's what we should all be optimizing for. Um, so the way that I have this internal conversation with myself is generally with a whiteboard. So I make it a little external, and I write kind of like what would be like my mission statement, right? Almost like a business of life. And the mission statement for my life is it's dynamic, right? It's changing, and it's definitely a little fuzzy, but it's certainly around. Uh, it's like three bullet points of experiencing life, learning from it, gaining wisdom, and sharing as much of that as you can to help others. And then I look like, okay, like what do I need to do to optimize, for that, if you will. Um, and what I've really come down to, and there's a lot of things that fall under it, but the absolute number one thing that comes to top of the list over and over is awareness. And awareness of your thoughts, awareness of your actions, awareness of your the way you interact with people, awareness of people around you and their thoughts and actions, awareness of your emotions, your sensations, your senses and what you're feeling inside your body. And I feel optimizing for awareness trickles into um, peace, like an inner peace, like a just heart rate that's lower permanently. I feel like it trickles into um, I think there's a little bit of being unbiased, right? It's like you don't just look at things as negative, you're just becoming aware of them, and almost similar with positive. So I don't know if that's the type of answer you're looking for, but
Yeah,
funny you
it's
asked that question because that's definitely an exercise I go through or have been
mhm.
through.
It's interesting. Like, we there was a whole debate on this post that I made, and somebody said at the beginning, like, if all you want is happiness, there's a pill for that, right? So, but and I think it's this, like, happiness is this fleeting emotion. And where, like, a couple of people I really respect, like PhDs in psychology, et cetera, that were on my friends list, they kind of sort of like approached it very similar to you, which is like the consensus was something around presence and peace of mind, like basically kind of presence, meaning you're living in the now, and you are, even though you're not happy, like you can be curious still about, I'm sad. Look at Chris being sad, that kind of stuff. And so I think you're onto something. So I was just curious what your answer would be. So thanks for that. And then as far as like connecting with me, yeah, the people who are right for Rhodium tend to be people who have a online business, either an e-commerce, SaaS, content business. Typically, they have strong product market fit and they're looking to scale. So that usually means, they're kind of doing maybe high 6 figures to 9 figures, something in that range. And they're just good people. They're willing to pay it forward to others, etc.
Yeah, awesome. I will, any post and show notes, I'll definitely include your information, so people can dive into that. And I appreciate that prompting question. Did you have a strong opinion on what we should be optimizing for?
Well, my first instinct was happiness, and I got challenged on it, and I still don't really know, but I think peace of mind is kind of where I landed, and I think that implies you're present as well.
Hmm.
So I think it's kind of intertwined, and I've heard that from a couple of people I very very much respect, and still playing with it. I think
Yeah.
everything's a work in progress.
Funny, I specifically chose the word happiness, a little bit of from a marketing standpoint,
Well, it's a
right?
great catch-all. I mean, it is like sometimes you have to, like, it is semantics,
Ex-
right? And you have to make it your own in some way. And I think like people want to be happy. People want happiness. They want, and I think the way to think about it is like, how do you make more opportunity for happiness to happen in your life, right? But it's not the end all be all. So I think like there's a lot of books out there that are, speak specifically to happiness. So I don't think it should have a negative connotation. That's not what I was getting at, but I was just wondering, like, yeah, is it the end result or not in your mind? So
Yeah, well, that's is definitely something to think about on my evening jog today.
yeah,
Um, but hey, Chris, I appreciated this opportunity to learn more about you.
me
I
too.
mean, clearly, you're a wise man, and what I mean by that is you take the time to reflect on what you do, and you're not scared to act based on intuition, and then reflect versus non-action or non-reflection, because that leaves that there's no feedback loop there. So
Right.
I appreciate you taking the time to join. I can't wait to meet you in person. I will be in Montana back half of September, and I just look forward to the next time we talk, email, get lunch, or
Sounds
whatever it
great.
may be.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Thanks for
Thanks,
inviting
Chris.
me on. It's fun.
Be good, man.
You too.
Hey, thank you for watching today's episode. If you got something out of this, it would mean so much if you could just take a second and give us a rating on whatever platform you're watching it on. And it would mean so much to the world if you could just find one person that you think this message resonates with and you could share that with them. Thank you so much for your support. Looking forward to share the next episode with you.